tonight. Digging out. Closed schools and businesses in Saskatoon as the city shovels its way out of a winter storm. Also, among the snow and cold, teachers made their way to the Legislature in Regina to try to get the attention of politicians who return today for the spring sitting.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Monday, March 4th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for watching. Southern and central Saskatchewan was slammed by a snowstorm this weekend, dozens of centimeters after a fairly dry winter. Now, the storm's finished and the shoveling out begins. Dane Patterson digs into it for us.
If you've been outside today, there's a chance you've had to dump snow out of your boots. But if you haven't been outside and seen what it's like, let's take a walk. Saskatoon was among the hardest hit places in Saskatchewan where a snowstorm swept through the province this weekend. Cars are buried in snow.
It was a bit stressful because it took me around half an hour to take my car out of my parking lot itself because there was so much of snow all around the wheels. So, it was a hectic morning.
Vehicles are still struggling to drive through some unplowed areas of the city. Other people have made their own travel adjustments, and it's a welcome surprise for some, experiencing their first Saskatchewan winter.
I think I expected this, not too sure, but for me it's actually quite exciting, but appreciate it's a big disruption to a lot of people.
The city is digging its way out, but it's got a long way to go. The city's roadways emergency response plan is in the middle of plowing its top priority streets. That means access to emergency facilities, major arteries, and freeways. And on Tuesday, they'll likely get to grading the major Saskatoon transit routes and some of the lesser priority streets. But the issues extend beyond roadways. The next few nights are going to be cold, and the city is concerned about people outside.
One big worry is homelessness. We have more people homeless, as many cities have across the country, than we're used to in the past, and very concerned about that population, especially now as the temperatures are dropping.
The Salvation Army operates an overnight warming shelter at St. Mary's Parish along 20th Street. It's listed as one of the city's extreme cold warm-up locations, though it was tough to get there traveling through knee-high snow.
On a normal night throughout the winter months, there's several outreach teams that are providing transportation around town. They weren't functioning last night, so extra challenge just getting to the warming center last night for many folks.
The city of Saskatoon says there was a chance that the warming shelter might not have opened yesterday because employees couldn't make it there. But that Saskatoon Police and Saskatoon Fire Department actually picked them up and brought them there so that it could. Dane Patterson, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, Regina didn't get hit as hard as Saskatoon, but there is still a lot of snow to deal with. Before Sunday was done, the city had already declared snow routes in place from 6 a.m. today until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. Those 16 kilometers of road are marked no parking to clear them for emergency vehicles. The city says this storm response will only include Category 1 through 3 roads, meaning residential streets will not be plowed, with a few exceptions of streets affected by blowing snow.
So we do have crews out and about taking care of some of those locations that do get some more snow than other areas of the city. So just be aware that there may be some plowing activities just on roads that do fall outside that Category 1 to 3 streets, but are seeing a significant amount of snow being dropped on those streets.
Bien says the city is also seeing some delays with Regina Transit because of the snow. He suggests logging onto Transit Live to track the bus that you need. Meanwhile, the snow did prevent a number of people from getting home last night. The heavy snow and high wind forced some to make unplanned stops last night in Lloydminster. One of the chaperones for the Aidan Bowman Collegiate ski trip says the hotel was filled with snowed-in Saskatoonians.
Watching the roads with our bus driver and talking with those in Saskatoon. So we ended up at a hotel here in Lloyd and just kind of stumbled upon quite a few groups in the same situation. There's a local Saskatoon track team here. There's a palm and cheer team here from Marion Graham, and then Again, we have 46 of these in Bowman High School kids. So they were packed.
Rittinger says the kids had fun visiting and playing cards. He says their bus driver, the hotel staff, and others were extremely helpful. And helpful is the name of the game in weather like this. Our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now to look at the actual numbers. So, how bad was it?
Yeah, a lot of snow over a pretty large area, Sam. Southeastern Saskatchewan picking up around 20 centimeters or so. Regina and south central sections about 10 to 20 centimeters. But of course, it was really that Saskatoon and west central part of the province dealing with over 30 centimeters of snow. Just northwest of Saskatoon, nearly 50 centimeters, according to Environment Canada in some spots. If you need a visualization of just how much snow there is, Jessica took this photo from her driveway in the Montgomery neighborhood of Saskatoon, and that is what almost 40 centimeters of snow looks like from top to bottom there. And for Saskatoon, this 30 to 40 centimeters, well, that is more than what you would get in an average February and March combined in terms of snowfall. You usually see about 25 centimeters in both of those months. Now, the last time we had a major storm like this doesn't happen every year. You have to go back to Civic Election Day of 2020. It postponed that election, and now we are seeing this kind of weather again, Sam. And now, of course, we talked about the snow. There is cold on the way. We'll address that coming up a little bit later.
All right, thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Teachers are picketing once again as part of rotating strikes, and this time those in Regina took to the Legislative building for their demands to be heard. Tyreek Reed has more.
The weather didn't stop more than 3,500 teachers and supporters from picketing outside the Legislature on Monday. It was part of continuing job action on the part of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. Their goal? Get the government back to bargaining, and to include class size and complexity into contracts. But the government continues to refuse, leaving those decisions to local school boards. And after months of stalled talks, teachers say they are fed up.
That doesn't work. I'm negotiating with my local board, and our board hasn't had an increase in funding for classroom complexity in 13 years. Okay? And that's the same across the board ever since they changed the mill rates. So any claims that the local school boards can handle this are debunked simply because they have no money.
The government says addressing classroom complexity is still a concern. The Premier says they've already made investments to solve the issue.
We as a province have invested heavily through that significant per capita investment that Saskatchewan families make in education. $300 million each and every year in supports for learning, $53.5 million post-budget last year, specifically in classroom size and complexity.
The government says it will continue to allocate at least $53.1 million per year to address class complexity. But teachers say promises made outside of a contract aren't enough.
We've seen across the country how it can be incorporated into provincial agreements. There's at least 3 or 4 that have them. We want it in the contract so that it's sustainable, predictable, and guaranteed.
I hope they know that teachers care, that teachers are standing out here in minus 35 and 40K an hour winds, 50K an hour winds, and we're going to keep on doing this until they finally listen up and make the changes they've needed to make for a decade, which is a fund education.
The STF has already planned to escalate job action this week. That includes withdrawal of noon supervision and their support of extracurricular activities. Tyreek Reed, CBC News, Regina.
And while thousands of teachers were picketing outside the Legislature, Premier Scott Moe began his morning outlining the government's labour market strategy. It was the unofficial kickoff to the opening day of the sitting, which ended up returning to a familiar debate. Adam Hunter has the details.
Premier Scott Moe started day one of the legislative sitting at Young's Equipment in East Regina. Moe gave details of the government's 3-part labor market strategy. He says it will help fill jobs, reduce barriers for people trained outside the province to allow them to work here.
All of us working together to fulfill the labor market requirements that we have today, as well as looking tomorrow.
After the announcement, Moe talked to reporters. He was asked about last week's decision not to remit the carbon tax on home heating to Ottawa. Moe called the carbon tax, quote, silly, ridiculous, and harmful, and says it should be removed on everything. He says comments by the federal natural resources minister that the carbon rebates wouldn't come to Saskatchewan if the tax wasn't remitted was, quote, unfair.
What we have said is that would be the fair approach in Saskatchewan as well, is that we are going to pay less tax. We mirrored the decision that the federal government made, removing that carbon tax from home heating sources that we are able to do. And we would expect to be treated equally among this nation when it comes to whatever rebate may be coming.
The opposition NDP started out the first question period of the spring sitting asking about taxes, calling again for the government to scrap the provincial fuel tax. It also was critical of the government's response to the federal government on the carbon tax.
We say this because on Friday, we learned that neither the Sask Energy Minister nor the Premier even bothered to pick up a phone to try to get a deal from the feds. Mr. Speaker, that is not leadership.
Beck says Minister Dustin Duncan took time to shoot a video outside of Parliament rather than trying to contact and speak with a federal minister. She says the government is more interested in fighting than finding solutions. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
Also on day one of the sitting, you could have heard a pin drop inside the legislature when the member for Cutknife Turtleford rose to make a statement.
I think we all have to remember that as members, elected officials, that we are just like regular people. And sometimes we make mistakes, just like private individuals do in their lives. Some are major, some are minor, but we probably all know somebody who's either said something or done something that they truly wish they could redo or take back. I can't change what I tried to do that day, but it is something that I am truly sorry for and will regret for the rest of my days.
An apology from MLA Ryan Dometer. He was charged with procuring sex last year in connection at an incident at a Regina hotel. Dometer says the incident was a lapse in judgment when he was experiencing personal problems. The Crown stayed the charge after he finished a prostitution offender intervention program. Dometer was kicked out of the Saskatchewan Party caucus and now sits as an independent. The question about where to put the 30-bed emergency shelter that was axed from the Sutherland neighborhood of Saskatoon is still unanswered. A recent vote in City Council highlights how complex it can be for cities to set up these facilities. New rules created last month prevent shelters from being located within 250 meters of an elementary school. A professor of geography and planning at the University of Saskatchewan says she looked at Saskatoon's map, and with the new criteria, there's almost nothing left for potential space. This map shows all the elementary schools in Saskatoon. That includes public, Catholic, and private. Experts say it makes sense for people to want distance between schools and shelters, but what options does that leave?
It is not an easy solution, but we definitely have to keep working on that. But looking not from my comfort of my neighborhood being or having a shelter, but from the people that need and where is the best possible place to put them and to help them and for the society to protect them, not to keep them away. These people also have the right to the city, the right to enjoy the city, the right to public spaces, the right to parks, the right to a washroom, so we can keep closing on them. We all have the right to the city, but especially those that are more vulnerable.
The city says it will continue to look for new locations for the shelter. We reached out for an update today, but didn't receive one before showtime. Well, the snowy weather didn't stop fans or teams from getting to the Montana's Brier in Regina. The men's curling championships are now well underway at the Brand Centre. Team Saskatchewan, led by Skip McMahon out of Saskatoon's Natana Curling Club, is sitting in first place in Pool B. They're undefeated in 3 games and play in draw 9 tonight at 7 o'clock against Nova Scotia. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Apple has been hit with 2 legal issues on 2 continents on the same day. It's been ordered to pay more than $14 million in a settlement by a BC judge here. And in Europe, Apple's been slapped with more than $2 billion in fines over a different matter. Paula Duhachik breaks it down for us.
It's been a double whammy of a day for U.S. tech giant Apple. First, the European Union ordered the company to pay nearly $2 billion US, about 2.7 billion Canadian, after it found Apple had unfairly favored its own music streaming service over its rivals.
The fact that it comes on the same day as the company finalizes its payment to close out the Batterygate scandal, just really adds insult to injury and does illustrate that tech companies can't behave as they wish all the time, that at some point, if you cross lines here and there will be costs.
In the case known as Batterygate, Apple has also been ordered to pay between $11 and $14 million as part of a settlement to eligible purchasers of the iPhone 6 and 7.
Run a full 40% faster than the A9 chip in the iPhone 6S and 6S Plus.
Class action lawsuit alleged the company used software to deliberately slow down its devices and convince consumers to buy a new one. Apple has denied the allegations and says the settlement is not an admission of wrongdoing. Eligible claimants can receive between $17 and $150 each once they provide the serial number for their phone. Information about how to collect will be available in the days and weeks ahead. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac. March Mania is on now.
And our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now. A busy day back from vacation. And we're not done with the snow.
No, it keeps on going. I mean, of course, we could use it for sure. It's been a very dry one this winter and fall and summer before that and year before that, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we still have one lone snowfall warning. This is in northeastern Saskatchewan around the Pelican Narrows and Sandy Bay area. We've already seen upwards of 25 centimeters in this part of the province, too. It's not just south and central that's seen the snow, and there could be another couple of centimeters possible in this area as we head through the overnight tonight. But that is not the only watch warning that we have in place right now. Of course, the snow is gone from central Saskatchewan, but now the cold air starts to move in. And these are extreme cold warnings for Saskatoon and Prince Albert, out toward the Battlefords, Kindersley Rosetown, up toward Meadow Lake. And this is for wind chills dropping below -40 tonight. It is going to be a frigid one, and we're already well on our way there into the -30s right now through a good chunk of central Saskatchewan, even down to Regina. We're close to that right now. And getting cold up in the north, but far from warning criteria there, thankfully. Wind chills fueled in part because of the winds that we've been seeing today, still gusting from this system that moved through, upwards of 40 to 50 around the Yorkton area, starting to taper off now. And with high pressure moving in over these next couple of days, that means that those winds are likely going to stay on the light side. So it'll be chilly, but at least we won't have to contend with too much of a wind chill, and we should see those extreme cold warnings come to an end within the next day or so here. High pressure also keeps us clear by and large through tomorrow. Except as that departs, we start to see a bit of cloud cover building into extreme southern Saskatchewan, south of the Trans-Canada, and yes, possibly another round of some snow heading into Wednesday morning as that begins to move eastward into southeastern Saskatchewan. But I think we'll avoid the brunt of this system, which is going to be moving primarily through southeastern Manitoba and into northwestern Ontario. Another messy system there. We are only going to look for maybe a 1 to 3 centimeters from that in southern Saskatchewan. And for the north, this is accumulation from this system. Tonight, you see, we're really not looking for too much more in the way of that system. But in terms of snowpack, you'll recall a few weeks ago, this part of the province was looking bare and dry. But now, thanks to this system moving through and with a little bit of snow over the next couple of days, we are looking for that snowpack to return. And it's especially still pretty thick up in northern Saskatchewan. So for Regina, yeah, snow will be sticking around, and it'll be a brisk one tomorrow. -16, probably feeling closer to -20 with just a bit of wind. That system bringing through just a couple centimeters of snow Wednesday before we see some clearing for the weekend. And look at that, positive temperatures heading into Saturday, Sunday, getting once again above freezing and above seasonal for this time of year. A little cooler in Saskatoon for tomorrow, looking around -18. And then you have less of a chance of that system Wednesday, maybe just some flurries here and there, and then things again rapidly improving. So as you can see, Sam, a couple of cold days here and there, but then the melting begins again.
If it melts, you don't have to shovel it.
There you go. Why not just wait it out?
Right. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
They're calling it Tumbleweed. thousands upon thousands of tumbleweeds are blowing into towns across Utah, piling up on the sides of houses and burying cars. The weeds are actually an invasive species, but people in Utah say this is not the first time they've had to deal with them. Strong wind across the U.S. is to blame for the influx. We'll be back after the break. Maine says Donald Trump can be on its U.S. presidential ballot in November. The state reversed its ban after a unanimous decision today by the U.S. Supreme Court. The top court today blocked Colorado's attempt to disqualify Trump over the U.S. Capitol riot on January 6th, 2021. Paul Hunter has the story.
I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court.
For Donald Trump, it is being described as monumental, a clear and massive win. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling his name can be on the ballot for the presidential election this fall. The court's 9 justices unanimously reversing a decision by the top court in Colorado that had decided Trump was disqualified.
You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well.
The case stems from the rioting on Capitol Hill January 6, 2021. Those in the crowd egged on by Trump as they tried to prevent Joe Biden from gaining the presidency. The U.S. Constitution specifically prohibits any who've engaged in insurrection against the U.S. from holding office. But after arguments at the Supreme Court last month, the justices agreed no single state, and indeed other U.S. states have followed Colorado's lead, can be allowed to disqualify a federal candidate in that way, ruling only the U.S. Congress can do that. But even as efforts to keep Trump off this year's ballots failed, those who'd led the push to do so underlined.
What's important to note is that the Supreme Court's decision today did not exonerate him. They did not say that January 6th wasn't an insurrection, and they did not say that he didn't engage in insurrection. Instead, the court let him off on a technicality.
All of this one day ahead of so-called Super Tuesday, when millions of Americans will cast ballots toward nominating candidates for the White House. One day after his win at the Supreme Court, but while still battling multiple other criminal and civil cases against him, Donald Trump is expected to all but officially secure his nomination tomorrow. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
And Ethan is back with one last look at your weather.
And those temperatures keep sliding downward tonight. In Regina, we'll hit minus 24 by midnight. A little bit of wind, though, making that feel below minus 30 at times. We'll see a mostly sunny start to the day tomorrow. Again, very light winds, but still feeling close to minus 30. And then as we get into the afternoon, a little bit of cloud cover starting to build in. Not a whole lot of improvement in temperature. We'll be around minus 20, and that'll be pretty close to our daytime high. For Saskatoon, a reminder that you're under that extreme cold warning, so just a little bit colder for you folks. Around minus 26 tonight, a wind chill of around minus 37, but this is when it really kicks in when we hit the 8 a.m. hour tomorrow. On your way out the door, we're around minus 31 with a wind chill near minus 40. Those winds, though, going to subside a little bit as we head into the afternoon, but still chilly at times tomorrow, Sam, for sure.
Can I give you the opportunity to do that over again?
Sure, yeah, I'll take you up on that.
It won't change though, will it?
No.
Sad trombone. Okay, thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
That is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/Sask. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or go download the CBC News app. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night and stay warm.